Your Words Destroyed My Planet, the stream series, the edited version. Originally streamed live at twitch.tv/dualitiesdownfall. More information in the description. For Your Words Destroyed My Planet, Chapter 26.
When it comes to Subject DS1, he was the first person whose existence suggested a potential genetic connection with balancing. The fact that most balancers have ghosts who are close to them, either emotionally or biologically, does not in itself suggest that this is an inherited trait. But the things I heard from Subject DS1 made me consider that it was a possibility. I have made the question of previous supernatural ability a standard interview question now with new subjects. Even though this is in no way supernatural, it is something that people easily explain away. Though the prevalence of the supernatural in myths across Earth culture could perhaps be in part attributed to this in the same way that we have in the past explained some phenomena as unusual lightning formations or other such things. I have attached my first interview with Subject DS1. I was attempting, at the time, to find out more about balancers, even those who were deceased by the time I could get to them. Dr. Lalonde says. She's younger in this clip, not drastically so, but enough that you can notice it compared to the last video you saw her in. Her hair is a little longer here, curving around her face to reach her silver necklace with a silver spider for the pendant. Given her attitude with people, you think it's a pretty apt animal for her to like. The video changes, showing a small, sterile-looking room. The kind of interview room you'd expect to see in one of Terezi's cop shows or movies. You're a little taken aback at the person you see, though. He's sat at the interview table with a plate of food piled in front of him, and he's eating it with the keen focus that might come from not having seen a lot of food lately. Some early ships went through rough patches when it came to steady food supply, especially smaller ships that don't have the capacity that yours does. One or two failed crops can cause a kind of chain reaction through the entire supply and put people in a precarious place. So, yeah, he's eating. The person you're watching, though, It's unsettling in the same way that seeing Dr. Lalonde can be. The faces of your friends in the Strider family rearranged back into the parts that made them. He's young, though, definitely a teenager, and there's something of Dirk and Hal there in his presentation, the set of his jaw and even the way his hair lays, but here and there it's different. The slope of his nose or maybe the shape of his mouth are a fraction of Dave or Rose. There's a sharp watchfulness to his eyes that's a lot like Rose, always trying to read the situation, but there's not a lot of the same humanity there. Maybe you're just projecting because you know what he's going to grow up to do to people. Dr. Lalonde slides into frame and sits in the seat, the camera just catching the edge of her in frame from its station behind her shoulder. Dirk Strider, correct? She asks. Unfortunately, he's midway through a mouthful of food that takes him a few moments to chew through and actually swallow. Sorry, it's been a bit since we got something green here. Dirk, yeah. He nods, and his Alternian is weird, accented with Spanish, but his exact pacing, the intonation and choice of his words, tells you that he doesn't speak Alternian very often at this point in time. No problem at all. Please, enjoy it on us, since you were so kind as to speak with us, Dr. Lalonde says pleasantly. The young bro looks at her suspiciously and then stabs some broccoli with a fork. Exactly what kind of science are you doing where talking to me is what you need? I heard free meal and I was good, but what do you want? He asks and eats the floor out of broccoli in one bite. I do astrophysics and psychology primarily, but you end up doing a lot of everything, Dr. Lalonde says lightly. Physics is okay. I like psychology. I've been studying that a lot. Figuring out how people work, picking them apart. Just seems like they got all the cool shit done years ago on Earth before they made ethics rules and shit. I like it, though, Bro says, with a grin that's still unsettling, even at that age. I wanted to ask you about your brother, Dr. Lalonde says, sliding a tablet across to him. That grin falls clean off of his face, leaving Bro's expression cold. He stabs at his food and gives the doctor another look, this time harder. Dave's dead. I don't know what you'd want to know, he says coldly. I'm aware that he's dead. My condolences. I wanted to ask you a few questions about him, though. Could he ever do anything, or did he ever tell you about anything that seems unexplainable? Dr. Lalonde asks. She waits as Bro stares at her. You wonder if he's trying to figure out how she ticks or how she works.
Dave was a hero. Everyone says that. He saved people's lives on that ship and died doing it, so if you're trying it...
Bro starts to say, but Dr. Lalonde holds her hand up. Dirk, please. I'm not trying to do anything to damage your brother's reputation at all. Far from it. We're trying to work out a common thread in incredible people, shall we say. I wanted to know more about him, and I have a report that you made around the time that he died, although I've been told that you don't stand by this statement now. I would love to hear about it in your own words, Dr. Lalonde says smoothly. She leans across the table to open a new file on the screen, though you can't see what it is. It makes Bro tense a little, but he leans back in his chair and quite purposefully acts like he isn't tense at all. You can see his jaw move slightly, like he's chewing the inside of his cheek for a moment. After several silent seconds, he speaks.
Nothing I say goes on his record?
He asks finally. Nothing at all. This is just for science. Dr. Lalonde agrees right away. Bro draws a deep breath in, and for a few moments he moves his food around his plate with a fork, suddenly less interested in eating it. When Bro speaks, his voice is a little quieter, and his eyes are on his food, not the doctor herself.
Dave was named after our grandfather. It's a family name. Goes back ages. Neither of us met him, our grandfather. He was on Earth when it all happened. Mom told us he gave up his place for his kids to get away. That's what she said. He was this...
Bro pauses and frowns for a moment. It's an expression you're familiar with making, which is the what's the word in this other language face.
He was spiritual, I think that's the word. Not God, really, but ghosts, voodoo, or kind of a curandero. I don't know if you...
Bro tries to say. I know exactly what you mean. My family is originally from Spain, so I know what you mean. Or at least the translation. But for the sake of keeping things in Alternian, as we have to do in the sciences now, we'll stick with spiritual. Dr. Lalonde nods.
Right. So, Mom said that Grandpa Dave wanted to fight the void. Like, he was born on Earth, so he'd die there, but sometimes she'd say he kept vanishing, or whatever. Anyway, Dave was named after him. One thing I can think of with Dave, he was older than me by 4 years, so I went with him to places when Mom was working. When we were younger, there was this big train problem. It came off the rails and killed a lot of people. Dave stopped us getting on it. We were the stop right before it crashed, and he said he saw our grandfather and that he warned him or something.
Bro explains. I see, Dr. Lalonde says.
And I know what you're thinking, that it was some trauma response, the kind of thing people tell themselves after, but he told me it before we knew what happened. I didn't believe it. I wasn't that young and stupid. When he signed up to be a sailor, he obviously didn't mention that part. Thinking you can see dead people won't get you past the psych evaluation,
Bro says, with a cynical little laugh. I can certainly see that being cause to bar someone from the job, yes, Dr. Lalonde says.
Dave was good at his job, exploring new planets, bringing things we need back. So what if he still saw Grandpa Dave? He was good at what he did. Why would it matter? Not that I believed him when he told me, but you're just... Yeah, sure, Dave, about it. But then...
Bro trails off, his eyes fixed on the table. Then? Dr. Lalonde prompts.
Then I saw him. I saw him in a dream, on the night Dave died. I saw him in the shuttle, saw the people he was with. I saw our grandfather with him. They were flying back, and Dave was singing some song, something from when we were kids that Mom used to sing, that she probably learnt from our grandfather. He was there with this guy, some Irish-looking asshole, red hair, short, scar right here, Bro says, and points to his temple. The guy was hurt or something, and whatever Dave was doing wasn't helping. Then Grandpa was pointing out the window, trying to show Dave something. It was... Look, I know what space looks like, and how faint stars can be hard to see when you're inside with light. I know that. But I saw out the window, and it was nothing. Nothing. No stars, space, nothing. The color of the dark out there made regular black look weak in comparison. Then these arms started coming through the walls, and Dave panicked, got back in his seat. All that time, Grandpa was rushing around fighting these arm things, but there were so many. They clawed people. The guy with the red hair got his throat literally ripped out by one of them, and then the window just popped, or I think it was there and then there wasn't, and they all died. Or, well, Dave had been getting people to put their helmets on, and those people survived. I woke up and told Mom about it, and then we got the call about Dave. All the people I saw survive lived, and no one ever listened to me about it. Bro insists.
Dr. Lalonde nods for a few moments and quietly picks her tablet up again.
Have you had anything like that happen since?
She asks him. Bro shakes his head. He looks unsettled just from speaking about that.
And did anyone tell you about what happened with your brother's shuttle? Did you get any details?
Dr. Lalonde asks.
I knew that the people I saw get their helmets on lived. Those things should be fucking automatic. How hard is it to have a pressure sensor that closes them? But no, they didn't give me any details. It was years ago, so to them I was some kid. I mean, obviously whatever happened wasn't what I dreamed, and I don't know how I dreamed that. Obviously my grandfather wasn't with him, and there were no arms in the walls. I don't know, it was years ago. He mutters.
Dr. Lalonde sets her tablet down between them again.
Could you pick out the man you saw, the one you said got his throat torn out?
She asks him.
Kinda hard to forget that face. Sure?
Bro says with a grimace and leans over to look at the screen.
None of them,
he says almost immediately. Dr. Lalonde swipes a few times until Bro jumps and jabs at the screen.
That's him!
Bro exclaims. Dr. Lalonde pauses and holds up the tablet to the camera, showing a human man that pretty much fits the description he gave.
As it happens, you are correct. This man was on the ship, even though he wasn't a sailor, and I don't have it on my files that you would have met him. His face was not published with the reports about the incident. I'm going to show you a picture from his autopsy now, which was also never released. Dr. Lalonde says, tapping at the screen. She shows it to Bro, whose eyes widen.
His throat,
Bro whispers, and though you can't see, you're guessing that the autopsy showed just what Bro saw in his dream.
Indeed. Thank you for your help, Mr. Strider. You've been very helpful.
Dr. Lalonde says and stands up.
Wait, no, this means I was right. That Dave was right. There's something happening. You can't tell me that and leave,
Bro says, scrambling to his feet.
I'm afraid my research is classified,
Dr. Lalonde tells him simply.
Well, what if I worked for you? I've studied psychology. People are easy as shit to understand. I can do science. I could get qualified enough to work for you, especially with this kind of incentive. I have to know what happened,
Bro insists.
If you could do that, then perhaps. Your case is the most interesting I've seen to date. Don't change ships or anything. I may well have more questions for you next time I'm here,
Dr. Lalonde says slyly.
Have a job offer, too,
Bro says, and you hear Dr. Lalonde laugh before the camera cuts out. As the video cuts, Rose pauses it, reflecting all of you sat on Hal's lounge plank as you all stare at the screen in quiet horror. I've seen the transcripts of the rest of this. Her theory, or Bro's theory, was that men in the family inherited this balancer ability, and if I had all day I couldn't list out the number of ethical violations involved in this whole thing, Rose says with a shake of her head.
That's why the obsession with Dave happened,
Dirk whispers.
That's why he's Dave and not any other name,
Hal agrees.
I think that's why any of us are here. If he was looking for another Dave and she was running some case study or something, then all of this is fucked up,
Roxy says with a shudder.
Was Bro transphobic because he's transphobic, or because us not being the gender he thought we were fucked up with his prophecy or legacy bullshit?
Dirk wonders.
Since Solix isn't here, I feel the need to, in his absence, point out that both is probably the answer,
you say weakly.
I'm not sure what to think about this,
Kanaya says.
It's a lot,
you agree.
No, I mean, Well, yes, there is that. Obviously, he wasn't a good person, but at that point he was a traumatized teenager, and some authority figure, a young lady doctor, comes along and validates things that he wants to be true, and then baits him into working for her to find out the answers about what happened to his brother. He's obviously a perpetrator and a responsible party for what he did to all of you, and Dave especially, but...
Kanaya trails off helplessly.
Victims of abuse and manipulation aren't immune from becoming that sort of person. He can be both a person who is taken advantage of and an absolute monster of a person at the same time, Rose says firmly. Roxy stands up from the lounge plank and paces a little, running her hands through her hair. I mean, at least this is some kind of answer. We know why he did this. He wanted to know what killed his brother, what force did that. It's probably how he justified it to himself, studying things so he could defeat the Void or something, complete some legacy or whatever, and failing that, prime Dave for taking over, no matter what Dave wanted, Roxy says.
It doesn't make it better, Dirk says stiffly.
No, of course it doesn't, but I can at least understand how that thought process happened. You think you're in the right, and then bit by bit you do worse and worse things, and before you know it, you're electrocuting your kid for the greater good or something. It's wrong, and he's fucked up, but that's easier to understand than him just being this monster that terrorized us all, Roxy insists. I know what you mean. Knowing why is helpful in a way, even if it's not a reason that makes sense. It's easier to process than random cruelty, Rose agrees. You rub your hands over your face, your fingers pressing against your eyes for a moment as you try to think. When you take your hands away, your vision is a little off for a second. You probably shouldn't press that hard. Not unless you want to end up with Dave in the Robotic Eyes Club. Ugh. You just grossed yourself out thinking about that. Let's just sum up, you say, and get to your feet as well. Roxy has the right idea. Somehow, being on your feet and pacing about helps the thoughts come easier. We've seen enough things to understand the rough scope of your mom's projects over the years. We have evidence that she, at one point, sent one of her balancers to this ship, which means the captain was at least party to her research. We also think there's probably not all that much basis to saying that knowing about this stuff is automatically dangerous. You list off. I would assume that it's the terror and panic, but if people can cope with the Void already chasing us, then they can deal with this. Moreover, I wouldn't want my safety to be bought at this kind of cost. People have the right to know, Rose adds.
On a somewhat selfish note, it seems like our brother's been forced into this balancer role against his will from the start, and the captain is just continuing to do that. He can't tell anyone because he's been told what will happen if he does, assuming the captain hasn't issued him with any other threats, which I really hope she hasn't. Until all of this is known about, Dave's going to be stuck, and you will be too. We have to tell people, Dirk says.
Might I suggest that, although we should release all the information we have, we perhaps hold back on that one study that hinted that knowing about this might be dangerous. If people know they should be afraid of something, then it'll likely spread more panic and be more dangerous, Kanaya suggests. Agreed. That part we can release later, when it's been proven that everything is fine. Perhaps a few weeks or a month after, Rose agrees. Right, but we've also got to balance that against this whole planet of people that the sailors are getting resources to save them, and against the risk if we get caught, you point out. We said to do it closer to the time when they're coming back, which also saves Dave from being implicated in any of this, Hal says. Okay, but how? You ask, feeling almost at the point of despair at how frustrating this whole situation is. Hal makes a thoughtful noise and gets up, switching his TV to properly project a canvas. There's a couple of factors here. We need a way of communicating what's going on in a really brief, digestible way, so as many people as possible will listen. We need a way of storing all our hard evidence in a way that people can see it so that they can go and see for themselves, Hal starts to say, though the things he writes down are vague enough to not be damning if anyone else happened to see the screen, whether that be GHB bursting through the wall or someone sneaking through Hal's files.
You also want something that disseminates itself through the ship, so it's not a single point of information flow. That way, when the people who do know about this see that it's getting leaked, they can't just stop that one leak. Dirk adds.
I also say we want our names out of it as much as possible. I know there's going to be scrutiny on us because it's our mom, but still. Roxy points out. Hal writes anonymity down and stares at the screen for a few moments. He turns back to his siblings with a grim look on his face.
I think we've really got to talk about our family. It was one thing not telling Dad, June, and Jane about this when it was about our fucked up biological parents and the shit they did, but this is bigger. If we get caught, people are gonna assume they knew. We're putting them in danger,
Hal says unhappily.
And Dad warned us against hacking into Mom's research in case we got in trouble. Admittedly, we were just thinking about the astrophysics part, but still, Dirk says with a wince.
This doesn't have to be hard. We tell them that we found out things, that our parents hurt Dave, and that the captain's part of it even now. That they need to be wary of the sailors, and that we're going to expose everything to protect him. He's our baby brother. He's Dad's son. That's all they'll need to know. We tell them that much, and then when everything comes out, they can look shocked at the details, and it makes them look innocent in all of this, but they're not completely blindsided. Roxy reasons.
And if we get caught, I'm not exactly keen on being shipped off to some lad either, not to mention the idea of any of us ending up on a prison ship, you say.
I think the plan is to do this in a way where we won't get caught, Rose points out.
That's not a great plan. We need to build in backups. Maybe something like a digital deadman switch, where if we're not here keeping it checked on a regular basis, it does something. This makes me wish Solix was here. Multi-layered, sneaky viruses and programs are right up his alley. Hal sighs. We could wait for him to get back, but then we're risking getting him involved and making Dave look suspicious. Ugh. You grimace. We're just gonna have to rely on our own skills. It's not like we're bad at this. With the three of us together, we can make something that work. Dirk points out. Oh, just casually not including me there. I can code, you know. You say indignantly. Yeah, I've seen your terrible coding. Hal freezes as he looks at you. What? And also, hey, you snap. That terrible virus you wrote, it was clunky and janky as shit, but it actually blew up a few machines, and the ones it didn't, it fucked with all their files. We hired Solix on the damage control he tried to do on that for you. We could modify that. It spread like crazy and screwed up files, but if we could change it so it'd plant our files and our evidence on everyone's machines, that'd actually work, Hal says, his eyes gleaming with malicious delight.
And it being based off of Karkat's virus would be a red herring. Everyone who knows Karkat knows he can't code well, and he's not done anything since that last virus. So it's just coincidence that this is using a modified version of his old one. People could rule Karkat out with it, like a double bluff, Roxy says thoughtfully. I'm not sure if I should feel praised or insulted here, you mutter. I would like to raise a more practical matter here, Kanaya begins. We need to all agree here and now that we're willing to accept the possible consequences for this.
We've already been talking about it, Dirk points out.
No, I mean explicitly. We all understand that if we act and as a result the mission is called off early, that we could be personally responsible for lives lost. We need to accept that there's a possibility, despite being a horribly designed experiment, that telling people what we know could put them in more danger. I am not saying I think it will, but we need to accept that risk. We need to completely and absolutely accept that if we are caught, we could be imprisoned or spaced ourselves for this. We're saying that people knowing about these horrific things outweighs that our desire to protect our friends outweighs that. I'm not against this, I just think it's easy to get caught up in what is right without really looking at the risks, Kanaya insists. They're forcing Dave into this, forcing our friends into this too. My mother is out there somewhere torturing people for this, and I can't stand idly by when that happens. I can't. No matter the risk. Rose nods. I really hope that it won't make things more dangerous for people, and we're waiting until the last moment to minimize the risk for the carapacians. I think that's the best way to strike that balance,
Roxy says. The stupid thing is that if it just turned out that I had some ability out of nowhere and they asked me to use it to keep the shape safe, I'd agree. Of course I would. It doesn't hurt. It's hard because I don't know what I'm doing, but I get to see my ancestor again, and he's been listening to Cancre's lectures, so Cancre's getting the benefit of that. There doesn't need to be any secrecy, you say, clearly exasperated.
Even if they catch us and I get thrown out of an airlock, I don't think I'd regret this,
Hal says simply, and Dirk nods in agreement.
So, what's our next step now?
You ask, after several almost grim seconds. It's hard to focus on a strategy or a plan when you're paying so much attention to the real risk. All the more reason for Kanaya to have brought it up, though, you suppose.
Well, the three of us can work on this virus. Maybe the three of you could focus on how to put together that initial thing that people are going to get, something that'll make them take this seriously and actually read deeper,
Hal suggests.
On that note, what are we doing about Dave?
You ask.
How do you mean?
Rose says. It's kind of a big question, to be fair.
Dave is on this ship. People know him. Are we really going to show video footage and research reports about what your parents put him through? I know it's compelling, but it's also his life. He never told any of us about this, and even you said that he only gave you the smallest hints, Rose. Does Dave's privacy come into this?
You explain. You know Gamzee wouldn't like it if all the details of Kurloz's murder and how he dealt with it were shown to everyone on the ship. Traumatic shit is personal and private, but equally, it's that secrecy that's maintaining the system they're both stuck in. Ironically, you don't know what balance to strike here.
We're going to have to mention him, if for no other reason than name-checking him as a balancer. But I don't want to put everything about his past front and center, but it's not like we can hide it either.
Rose sighs.
We can, though. Theoretically, we can hide all of this by doing nothing, and we're choosing to not do that. But maybe there's a case to be made there about not holding back Dave's information just because we know him.
You say unhappily.
Well, look, we can work on the virus away from you. We'll do that. You three can work together with Karkat around so you know it's safe, and we can meet up later and see where we are,
Dirk suggests.
What?
You start and then wince. Everyone looks paranoid for a moment, as if GHB had suddenly burst in. It's not that, though.
If you're gonna tell the rest of your family, I have to be there, don't I? To make sure you're not being watched.
You say unhappily. It's not that you dislike their dad. Far from it. Mr. Egbert is the nicest man ever, and even when you were a little kid hanging out at June's house, he was always good to you. He was always good when he had to drop you back to Crab Dad, too. It's not like you promised him you weren't going to get involved in trouble, but you still don't want to be there and be part of a group that's theoretically let him down.
Yeah, you do.
Roxy agrees, with the same reluctance in her tone.
Maybe we should rip off that bandage sooner rather than later. We could go now, before I lose my nerve.
Hal mutters that last part.
Yeah, maybe now.
Dirk agrees. Rose gets to her feet with a determined breath in and sets her hands on her hips.
Then we have our plan. For now, we go home to Dad, tell him, June, and Jane everything, and deal with that,
Rose says decisively. You make eye contact with Kanaya. She looks back at you, but you can tell that she's definitely not going with you. Adding more ingredients to this awkwardness soup isn't going to help, but even so, misery loves company. Hal scrubs the screen clean, and everyone moves to the door. As soon as you're out and then out of the hive stem, Kanaya peels off in a different direction like the traitor she is, and the rest of you make your way to the Egbert hive. The journey is tense. You've no idea what this must look like to passers-by, but you hope, at least, that people don't care enough to pay attention. When you get to the right hive, there's a moment as everyone seems to want someone else to ring the bell, leaving Rose to sigh and eventually do it herself. You wait, although a treasonous part of your think sponge is desperately coming up with excuses to not be there. Sorry, have to go. I need to fold my laundry, wash my hair, unbox all the snack food in my hive, and arrange it in drawers in an aesthetically pleasing fashion. Not good excuses. The door opens and Mr. Egbert is standing there with a surprised look on his face.
Kids, and Carcat. Hello. What a surprise. He smiles.
Kids and Carcat? Jane's voice comes from inside. Behind Mr. Egbert, you see June jump over the lounge plank to look at you all. Yep, it's everyone, and Carcat is the apparently designated adult. She laughs. I'm always the designated adult, you mutter. T-shirt idea. June grins menacingly behind her father.
Come in, please. What's all this about, then? I know I haven't missed a birthday, he says, and steps aside to let you all in.
You'd ask if he knows your birthday, but he's actually sent you digital cards for it every year since you first made friends with June, so you know he does. As you all shuffle indoors, you spread out a little so you're not in one big clump of people. June has hopped up to sit on the arm of the lounge plank and is giving you a curious look, like she knows something is afoot and hopes that it's mischief and you're about to let her in on it. Jane, on the other hand, is standing at the edge of the main room, near the ablution block, towel drying her hair. You suppose you just interrupted their early evening time. It's not really going to get better from here, unfortunately.
We need to tell you something,
Dirk says, after a look at you to check that you weren't trying to secretly signal to him that there's a murderous clown ghost in here. What has your life become, that murderous clown ghost is a sentence that's going to crop up regularly?
But try and hear us out, please. It's really important,
Hal adds quickly.
All right, go ahead,
Mr. Egbert says seriously.
I think it might be easier to start chronologically, rather than the order that we came to discover things,
Rose suggests. Yeah, that's an easier sell than starting with ghosts and your ill-advised Ouija session.
Okay, look, I can explain why we did this later, but we ended up going into Mom's files after all. I know you didn't want us to, and I know it was against the law and we could get in trouble for it, but we had really good reasons and we found really important and awful things,
Roxy says. Mr. Egbert nods, clearly not pleased, but willing to hear his kids out.
We found out about Mom's research. The thing that happened to Dave's shuttle was no glitch. It was something to do with the void, and we all saw that. She was studying that, both the whole astrophysics part about how it works and this other thing.
Roxy goes on. Wait, so there's an answer for how that shuttle just vanished and reappeared way, way closer to the planet than it should have? June asks.
Kind of. There was stuff up there about reality going weird, but the exact mechanisms for it is a little over our heads,
Dirk explains. There's a pause as the Striders look at each other, clearly none of them eager to talk about the next part. It's Rose who speaks in the end.
It turns out that people can control this. Certain people. There was a lot of theory about how that happens, but the point is that Mom was studying it. Bro's older brother was one of those people, and it seems our great-grandfather may have been as well, but so is Dave. And we know that because Mom studied him.
Rose explains.
I know something about that, but I only ever got a few details out of him. Just enough to help him through medical appointments or to know what not to do. He would never talk about anything in much detail, though,
Mr. Egbert says softly.
You knew about this? How did we never know about this?
Dirk asks, and you can't tell if he's hurt that he wasn't trusted or what.
You all had your own individual needs when you got here. It wasn't my place to share, and it wasn't like any of you hurt or upset him because of it. If you were in danger of bringing back any of those fears, I would have stepped in, but beyond that, it was Dave's past to share or not to as he saw fit,
Mr. Egbert says simply.
Well, we found out the details anyway. Mom and Bro identified Dave's ability to know things and influence things that he shouldn't have been able to do. They tested him on it, trained him on it. They exposed him to the void, put him at great personal risk. When they ran tests and he didn't perform as they wanted, they electrocuted him,
Rose says with a snarl in her tone.
They what?
Jane shouts. You'd thought the plan was just to tell them the basics, but it seems like it's all going to come out.
They really did that? How do you know that? Wait, how old was he even?
June demands.
He was so little, Roxy sobs, and Jane rushes over right away and grabs her sister into a hug.
Mom had all of these research subjects held against their will. She was able to prove that they can do this stuff to keep the void and its effects back and keep people safe. She found out some methods, but...
Hal trails off, and he looks ill just talking about it.
The end result is she sent all her data out to loads of ships, and now people like Dave, these balancer people, are forced to do this and banned from talking about it. Our captain took one of Mom's research subjects and knowingly participated in that program, and now she's controlling Dave, Dirk adds.
As an additional terrible note, I found out that you have to be haunted to do this thing, which I am now. I have my ancestor, but Dave's got bro around him, apparently.
You chip in.
The captain is keeping Dave captive, and the other balancers too, telling them that they have to do this or everyone will die, and if they tell anyone, that person is at risk of death as well, based on some study that Mom did that didn't even show that. He's never told any of us, Rose says.
Silence falls over the room. June is standing apart from her siblings, her hand over her mouth. At her side, her father is standing there with his face blank. What happens if people know? You said they can't talk because of what happens. What happens? June asks.
Nothing happens. Nothing anyone has been able to prove, anyway. Even our mother didn't think there was any evidence for anything different happening. Anecdotally, people are scared that it'll make the void do something to people, but there's no proof of that at all, Rose answers.
Who knows about this? Mr. Egbert says finally, his voice quiet.
Kanaya's been helping us with this as well, but she didn't know before us,
Rose says.
We don't know exactly, Dirk admits.
I have a good number of leads. It seems that most people who know about it get some tattoo that only other people who know about it can see, but Cancri and I have been working on a list of people he's suspected for a while. But we're assuming a decent amount of the sailors, probably anyone really high up, definitely the captain. You answer. Mr. Egbert nods, his movements slow and almost distant in a way.
What have you done about it so far?
Mr. Egbert asks as he looks at his children.
We stole the research, carefully as we could so we wouldn't get caught,
Dirk says.
I've been reading through it when I can. Karkat talked to Cancri. Kanaya knows as well. Other than that, we plan to tell everyone, destroy this whole thing that's keeping Dave a prisoner,
Rose says as well. Mr. Egbert nods again, and the tension in the room is so thick as to be unbearable. Some nerve in your soul winds tighter and with the tension, and then, like a joint popping, the pressure releases, and suddenly you have a slightly surprised-looking Silas with you. He looks around the room, picking up the tension immediately, but you can't really talk to him right now.
I'm not sorry,
Rose announces into the silence. The rest of her siblings look at her as one, like she's completely lost her mind. It's obvious how much their father's approval means to all of them, so to flat out say that she stands by everything she's said and done takes some guts.
Young lady, I should hope I raised you better than that. You're helping someone that needs helping when no one else will. Your own brother, no less, and a whole bunch of other unfortunate people. I wouldn't expect any of you to apologize for doing the right thing,
Mr. Egbert says, almost offended.
Oh, I like him, Silas smiles. I mean, yeah, but we definitely did break a lot of very serious laws in the process already when you pretty much told us not to hack into anything off limits,
Hal says with a wince.
You're supposed to do the right thing, which usually does mean not breaking laws and reading things that are private for a reason. Ideally, the right thing would always be legal and free of consequences, but it isn't always, and I'm glad that you all knew the right thing when you saw it, and had the sense to come and tell me, Mr. Egbert corrects him.
If you tell everyone, that's gotta be some kind of treason, right? Jane asks, looking uneasy with that idea.
Almost certainly, but if this system is built on lies and suffering, then that's what happens. If the truth can destroy something, it's not worth preserving. Besides, our captain is only in power because the people on this ship allow it.
We have leaders for the sake of order and efficiency, but she's not ordained by God or anything, and quite frankly, if she dragged my boy into this when he was vulnerable and already hurt from your mother, then God is going to be the least of her worries," Mr. Egbert says darkly, his eyes narrowing with anger as he talks.
"I really like this guy," Silas says gleefully. "So, you're not mad?" Dirk asks squarely.
"Oh, son, no,"
Mr. Egbert says, getting to his feet and wrapping Dirk in a hug. You stand there feeling out of place as Mr. Egbert hugs his children. There are quietly asked questions about what exactly happened to Dave, him asking for detail about how they know all of this, exactly what you're sure various people know. Jane very sensibly wonders if she could be of help deciphering any of Dave's medical information, and she and Rose sit down to look it over together, their faces grim but determined. For your part, you stand against the wall. You're not part of this family, even if you are one of June's oldest friends, and though you met Rose later, you're just as close with her by now. But you're not family. This is a family, grieving a terrible wrong done to one of their members as they work out what to do about it and what it means for them. If you had any choice, you'd leave and give them privacy, but thanks to GHB, you can't leave, or else they could be observed without knowing it.
"Are you all right?"
Silas asks quietly, though it's not like anyone's going to overhear him. You pull your palm husk out and start to write. Silas catches on that he should read.
"I'm fine. I shouldn't really be here, but I have to be."
"Why?" Silas asks.
"Because they're a family. Humans have these family groups. It's not just a bond that goes top down like Lucis and Wiggler, but it goes laterally too. They're all part of the one family, and normally me being here in a moment this emotional and personal for their family would be weird and bad etiquette, I guess, but I can't go because GHB could come in here."
"Right, I can see that."
Silas nods and looks over at the humans. You see him hesitate and then lean a little closer to you.
"At the risk of being insensitive, can you explain how human families are structured? I'm not sure I understand."
Silas says quietly, although, again, no one is going to overhear him.
"Okay, sure. You have parents who are guardians of their children. Mr. Egbert over there, the one with the necktie, is their parent. Their father, in this case, because he identifies as male. There are various terms of male parents, father and dad having both been translated into Alternian, but each human language has its own terms for them. Female-identified parents are mothers, generally identified as either mother or mom in Alternian, but again, Earth languages have their own words. For parents who don't fit either, they kind of took the Alternian word ancestor as the Alternian word for that, but it tends to be shortened to Tor or Tur since the spelling varies. It's often the preferred term in human troll pairings who raise kids together. So Mr. Egbert here is their father.
"Right, so he's their father, and Dr. Lalonde is their mother?"
Silas asks.
Yeah, this is slightly more complicated. So, Rose, Dave, Roxy, Dirk, and Hal are biologically related to each other. Almost as closely related as we are, genetically speaking. So, their mother, Dr. Lalonde, and the one they call Bro are their biological parents. Essentially, their genetic material is the mix that makes up those five, although Dave isn't here right now. June and Jane, on the other hand, are a product of Mr. Egbert's genetics and someone else. I don't know who exactly, and whoever it is, they're not in the picture. Obviously, Dr. Lalonde and Bro Strider were terrible parents, and the 5 of their kids were taken away by the authorities, and eventually were taken in by Mr. Egbert. He adopted them, which is kind of like the process by which a Lucis picks a Wiggler, except a lot older in this case. They were teenagers at the time. Adopted kids are regarded as just as legitimate and real as children who are biologically related, so Mr. Egbert treats all of his children as his own, and they're all part of the same family unit. Does that make sense?
That's very interesting. So the bond between, say, Rose and... is that one Jane? That relationship is the same as it is between Rose and Roxy?
Silas asks, pointing them out.
That's a little tricky to say. yes, they definitely think of each other as family and as sisters, but as I said, Rose didn't meet Jane until Rose was about 13, whereas she's known Roxy her whole life. It's entirely possible that Rose and Roxy have a deeper bond due to shared history and both growing up in their very awful home environment that could have brought them closer, but I couldn't say. On the other hand, I know their first home was very stressful, and Rose may have had to compete against Roxy in certain ways for approval or to keep herself safe, whereas she wouldn't have had to do that with Jane. It's all pretty complicated. I know, at least in this matter, the Strider kids tried to keep this contained to their biological family because it involved their mother, but I would bet that's more to do with keeping their biological family's problems contained and away from their adopted siblings who weren't involved. Typically, though, I wouldn't say that they really operate with much distinction between biologically related and not.
What are you doing? June asks, suddenly at your side. You yelp and nearly throw your palm husk in the air out of sheer surprise. It still astounds you that June is one of the people in your life that you've known the longest, and yet you're still always surprised at how impossibly stealthy she can be when she wants to. Or, as she once put it, when it's funny. Nothing, you reply hurriedly. June raises one dark eyebrow perfectly without the other moving at all. You know she must have practiced that in the mirror or something. Oh, yeah, the least suspicious answer to that question, June says, all smug and insufferable. What of your ancient pitch crush? Nothing of it. Why would you ever bring that up? I can think of replies that are more suspicious, you say instead. Cyanide? What cyanide? June suggests. I've definitely been here all evening, person confirming my alibi. I mean, June, you add, and June snickers. Anyway, I have no idea what to think or do about everything they said about Dave and the captain. It's all fucked, June admits with a guilty look at her siblings. It's a lot to process. We've got a covert kind of channel where we arrange meetups to do stuff about this, because I need to be there so we can be sure we're not being supernaturally watched or anything. I think Hal owns it, or maybe Dirk or Roxy, I wasn't paying attention. But if you want to talk later when it's all sunk in a little more and it's not so immediately overwhelming, I've no problem with doing that. He's your brother. It's a huge thing. You're reassured, June. June makes a noise that communicates more that she heard you rather than any kind of meaning. Honestly, she's looking a little shaken by all of this, and you watch as she shakes herself off a little and gives you a weak smile. I'd rather not think about that right now. I heard you say earlier that you were haunted, though, so can we talk about that instead? June asks as an obvious deflection. You're not going to lecture June on how to process awful news, and if what she wants right now is distraction, that's at least tangentially related. You're going to give that to her. I should have known you'd be all about the ghosts. You sigh, like this is some huge burden. Busted. June shrugs slightly. It takes a second for the pun to kick in, and when it does, she should be thankful that you're in eyesight of her dad, or you'd bonk her on the top of your head with your fist. I've done a comprehensive survey of all of my friends and determined that you're the worst, you tell her. June grins. She's not sorry at all. Anyway, yes, I am haunted. Or part of some symbiotic relationship with my ancestor, which Gamzee is with his ancestor and Dave is with Bro. I'm not sure how symbiotic those particular relationships are, but the theory is that Signless helps me and connects me to some force of some kind in the void somehow, which protects me and everyone else around me, and in return, I keep him existing. I have fuck all idea of how any of that really works. I got the fastest rundown of it all from Fozer's ghost the night before he, died. So, yeah. You trail off into fractured little sentences because this whole thing is a mess. Alright, but how does it all work? I mean, is he here? Can I see him? Can he hear me or talk? What? What are the ghost rules? June asks. Not really sure. He can go places without me, which he does a lot. Which is good because he gets to do his own thing, and also he's not stuck a foot away from me at all times, subjected to mundanely watching me brush my teeth or whatever.
I can see and hear him, and he can see and hear all of this, but as far as I know, no one else can see him, except probably other balancers. You explain. Is he here now? She asks, clearly super focused on the ghost thing.
Am I going to have to do the same test to prove I exist again? I understand the skepticism, but it's getting a little tiring.
Signless says unhappily. You'd think you'd probably feel the same too.
Yeah, he's right there, and not really keen on doing tricks to prove he's real, if that's alright.
You say, and gesture to where Signless is standing.
That's okay. Can he walk through people?
June questions you as she looks keenly at the space you indicated, as if she could maybe see him through sheer force of will.
I haven't tried since I got attached to you, not that I recall anyway. It used to happen to me when I was hazier mentally. I didn't like people walking through me, though. It reminded me that I wasn't really here.
Signless answers.
He says he's not sure about now, but he didn't like it before. Kind of a reminder of the whole being dead thing.
You relay to June.
That makes sense. Did they react? And can he go through walls and floors and stuff like that?
June says right away, clearly eager to learn.
Sometimes they'd react, sometimes not. I can't really remember.
Signless shrugs.
Sometimes, on the reaction part, and yeah, he's gone through walls and floors. That's not a problem for him.
You explain.
Ah, but is he standing on the floor or floating?
June challenges you. As one, both you and Signless look at his feet, which are firmly on the ground.
I hadn't really thought about that. I floated up to go through floors and everything, but when I get there, I walk. Habit, I suppose.
Signless says, and then carefully picks his feet up off the ground so he's just hanging there in the air.
This is very odd to do when I'm in one place, but I suppose if I'm a ghost, I may as well. Perhaps I could find some chains and rattle them as well, really complete the look. Or I could see if I can find a bedsheet and manage to lift it somehow, then I can really look the part, though you'd have to cut eye holes for me first.
Signless adds innocently. You try very, very hard not to burst out laughing in the very serious atmosphere in the Egbert household. Right over there, Rose and Jane are looking at Dave's medical records. Mr. Egbert is talking to the triplets about what the very serious plan is from here on out. You just cannot laugh your head off in this sort of environment. Unfortunately, the inappropriateness of your laughter only makes you more inclined to laugh to break the tension, if nothing else. Through sheer force of will, you manage to restrain yourself. Holy shit, Carcat, what? June asks. You steel yourself and relay Signless's message, and then watch her try not to laugh in this incredibly inappropriate for laughter time. Okay, but can he actually interact with physical stuff? She asks with keen curiosity.
Sort of,
Signless says, and goes back to standing on the floor again.
I mean, he was able to screw with the lights before and influence a Ouija board, but that was before we were connected, so maybe he can't now, or maybe he can. I've not thought about it.
You say with a shrug. There's been a lot of other things going on. Not to be insensitive to Signless or anything, but this is something of a crisis situation.
You didn't think to... Ugh.
June shakes her head and looks over at her siblings.
Hey, how come none of you have made a ghost translator yet?
I did talk about it after the Ouija board thing, but we've been pretty swamped with not being caught hacking into highly classified files in the meantime. Seemed a little low priority, given he could just talk to Carcat for now.
Hal says, a little defensively.
You know, if we could make that electrical somehow, we could connect him up to Trollian so he could message anyone. It'd just be a matter of finding out what that interaction looks like and how distinct you can make each key press to determine size. It's not a portable palm husk, but it'd be something. Dirk adds.
Downside to that would be Bro could operate something like that too. I don't want to hear anything from him, and I really don't want him talking to any of you either. Think about it. Can you imagine the things he'd say to Dad?
Roxy points out.
You don't need to worry about me, Mr. Egbert says in a calm tone of someone who is genuinely unconcerned with opinions about him held by people he doesn't respect.
I'd certainly like to talk to him. He was fucking around in my academic field, and I'd definitely like to rip him apart, personally, academically, professionally, and grind his worldview to dust. Rose says, clenching her fist with the force of deep-seated anger.
She absolutely terrifies me, Signless announces.
Me too,
you agree quietly.
See? Karkat agrees. Fucking bro, second worst parent and scientist in existence, and that's only because Mom's around.
Rose says bitterly and goes back to looking over Dave's chart.
You weren't agreeing with her, were you? Signless said something, didn't he?
June whispers.
He said Rose is terrifying.
You say back under your breath.
No shit.
June agrees.
You spend several hours at the Egbert Hive, mostly staying out of the way and talking to June, who seems determined not to think about Dave just yet. You catch moments where she seems to veer towards it, but it's probably too awful, too big, too much in general for her to deal with. You put money that she'll be able to process this later when it's just her, Mr. Egbert, and Jane. Before you go, you make sure to explain the rules again.
You can't talk about this overtly over Trollian. We don't know what's being watched or how just yet. You start.
Though I am gonna look into it subtly. I at least have a reason for being in the kinds of systems that could do that.
Hal interrupts.
Right, but still, we don't know if someone else could overhear when you're in person. We don't know if GHB is scouting around listening for this kind of stuff or not, but it's not safe to talk about without me here. If you're careful and make out that you're concerned about what happened to Dave recently with the shuttle, or more generally in his past in a way that seemed normal, then that'd probably be okay.
You explain.
We're also not telling people about this,
Hal says as well.
What about Terezi or Branya? Have you told Sarava, Roxy? Because if you have, then that's not fair.
Jane points out.
I haven't. So far, we've been trying to keep this contained. But it might be sensible to have a policy of getting Karkat to check people out first, just to be sure that they don't have one of these tattoos as marking them out as someone who knows about this stuff. If Sarava knows about all of this and never told me, then things are over with us.
Roxy says firmly, and you see Dirk very visibly wince. Everyone around you puts two and two together and looks at Dirk. Jake has to know, surely. He's on the same team as Gamzee, and he and Dave work together all the time, too. He's a sailor.
If Jake knows, I want to know what he knows. If he's been told that Mom's research is fact and that Dave's just doing a job, then I could kind of understand that. But if he knows everything Dave went through and is okay with Dave being threatened, then...
Dirk doesn't finish that sentence, but looks down at his hand and the ring around his finger.
Jake would never hurt Dave knowingly. Dave's family to him. If he knows something, it's not what we know. It can't be,
Dirk says firmly.
Telling Terezi could put her in legal trouble. If she knew about us committing the crimes we have, she's most likely obligated to report that.
You say uneasily.
Terezi is your friend, but you're not kids anymore.
The law is the law, and as clever with it as she can be, she can't just let you off of serious crimes because you're her friend. It doesn't work like that.
Well, you just happened to get this information as an anonymous tip. Who could possibly trace where this information came from? We're just reporting a serious breach of ethics violations, massive international personal rights conventions, medical laws, and probably military ones too. Bigger fish to fry there than just working out the source, right?
June suggests with a sneaky smile.
Clever. It's a good enough reason for her to justify, too.
Mr. Egbert nods.
Okay, tell you what. The next few days, I'll go around with you and find your quads. I'll make sure they're not in on it, and we can go somewhere private and you can catch them up. It might take a bit of time, though. Gamzee's not as oblivious as people think he is, and busy and stressed out with all of this or not, he's going to notice if I never come home.
You tell them.
Well, then I think we all have a lot to think about, and if you're needed at home, perhaps you should go back,
Mr. Egbert says with a nod as he stands up fully.
Right, I should go.
You agree. They probably want some privacy from you by now. You're just turning to the door when a firm hand on your shoulder stops you. You turn and see that Mr. Egbert has stopped you leaving, and his hand is still on your shoulder.
Karkat, I know you've gone to a lot of great personal risk for this. You've always been a wonderful and loyal friend to my children, and I've always found you a pleasure to have around. I want to be clear when I say that I am very grateful for all that you're doing and have done, and your concern for my family, as well as the ship as a whole. This news has been harrowing, to say the least, but I'm very grateful that you came to us, and I hope that your ancestor is as proud of you as I am. Mr. Egbert tells you, and then pulls you in for a firm fatherly hug, complete with several pats to your back. Oh, no, you're not going to cry all over Mr. Egbert's nice shirt. You're not! For the record, I am proud of you. Silas adds by your side. God damn it, now you are crying. After you escape the firm fatherly embrace of Mr. Egbert without blubbering too much, you opt to leave. You walk to your hive, emotionally tired and drained. With a grimace, you open the front door and find the inside of your hive dark and empty. "Yamsey," you call out as you step inside. The door closes behind you, and you flick the light on, but you get no response from inside. You suppose you're alone. No Gamzee or his undead ancestor, and your own is staying away from your hive, lest GHB decide to do whatever it is that Reader was so concerned about. With a sigh, you lay down on your lounge plank and pull your palm husk out. You're going to try to look more into who exactly is in on this thing. Cankry's got you the list of his suspects all neatly laid out for you to see. With a little time, you can compare this to your HR records and see if there's anyone you can reasonably pay a visit to under the guise of work. The less conspicuous you are about checking this, the better. Actually, you could sit at work and look these people up one by one with their address and their work address and have Silas go look for you. Yeah, that's a better idea. Also, it means you're going to work, which is probably a good thing and not a suspicious thing to do with your time. Also, your boss would probably be happy about it, although given how much overtime you've done over the years out of the goodness of your own pump biscuit, you've certainly racked up enough owed to you to cover this much at least. Ugh. Do a job that helps people because you love helping people, they said. You'll be doing what you love and never work a day in your life. Actually, that's total shit. You might do your job because you enjoy helping people, but not everyone goes into your profession for that. In fact, a lot of people go into it because they just like having power over people. Moreover, when you're doing a job that's a caring profession for you, it makes it really hard to not overwork yourself way over your hours and healthy stress levels because you care too much to let people down. You could have gone into teaching, you suppose. Despite other people's accusations, you can watch your mouth around kids, and you've got a lot of patience for people who are emotional, incompetent, or frustrating because they're too young to have learned how to properly regulate their feelings or articulate their thoughts. You've got patience for that. Other teachers, parents, and guardians, on the other hand, well, you minimize the list on your tablet for now, and instead idly scroll through Trollian. Solix's handle is grayed out as offline, which is just weird to see. He was always online, even when he was asleep. He'd modified his permissions, so he was always on for you, and his palm husk would always ping if you trolled him, no matter when. He was right about all of this, and you wish he was here to talk to. You know he'd listen to you, and he'd come up with some great technical plan. You'd tell him about this, and he'd get that look on his face. Then, before you know it, his fingers would be flying across his keyboard, and he'd be off on some brilliant technical scheme to set everything right. Not that you don't trust the Strider's technical ability or anything, it's simply that they're not Solux. Guilt prickles at you as you think that. Gamzee is your Moirail. He's supposed to be the one you vent to, the one who helps you order your thoughts and function better, which he does, you're not saying otherwise, but he's better for calming you down so you can think straight or getting you to let go of something that's bothering you. If you want reason and planning, it's Solix you go to. As a friend, because you're just friends. Really. It's not like you jam with Solix, you'd never, but a horrible part of you knows how well it'd work. Trollian dings, and you've never been so grateful to have a distraction from your thoughts.
Karkat, are you online? I'm assuming that you are since it says you are, but, now I'm worried that you might not be online. but your palm husk could be on, and it says that you're here, but you're not.
Tavros!
Carcat!
Yeah, I'm here. I was just spacing out on my lounge plank, having an existential crisis and or any other kind of crisis. You know, as per usual.
In fairness to you, it's all been very stressful lately.
Well, yes, but that's no excuse.
Except, it sounds like it is?
You leave my logic alone.
Sorry, you're just going to have to, as they say, deal with it.
Well, shit. Consider me told, I guess. Also, if you were wondering where Gamzee is, I've no fucking clue.
Actually, on that matter is the subject that I came to speak to you about.
Do you want to take another run at that sentence there?
Yeah, that was a little unclear, actually. What I meant was that it was Gamzee that I was hoping to speak to you about.
Oh?
No, technically it was you that I was wanting to speak to you about on behalf of Gamzee.
You're making less and less sense as time goes on. Just say whatever it is and forgo the introductions to the topic. Maybe that'll be easier.
Right. So, I saw Gamzee and he was obviously very stressed and busy about work and everything, and I thought that I ought to come and talk to you to see how you're doing. Both because of our mutual friends being in a tricky situation, but also because Gamzee has had to be away so much, which is probably rough. So, I wanted to ask if you wanted to meet up and hang out.
Did Gamzee ask you to do this? 'Cause he could just come home and talk to me himself if that was what he wanted.
Oh, no, that wasn't it. It just seemed like a way for me to check in with my good friend, and then the next time I see my other good friend, I can assure him that you are all well and good, and then he will be happier too. Not his idea, all mine.
If this was someone else, you'd be more offended. If this wasn't Tavros, you'd almost interpret a conversation like this as an attempt to muscle in on your diamond. But this is Tavros, and you've been friends since you were kids, although, admittedly, he's more Gamzee's friend than he is yours, and you can tell that he's just trying to help out, even if he's being eye-wateringly awkward about it. The gesture is nice, even if the offer is clunky and weird. Honestly, it sounds like Gamzee's not coming back anytime soon, and it'd be nice to go see someone who isn't involved with this whole shit show of exploitation, horrific trauma, conspiracies, and goddamn ghosts. It's not like you can talk to anyone else. All the Striders and Egberts are involved, same with Aradia, Gamzee, and Kanaya now. Jade, Solix, and Nepeta are off on this mission. Feferi and Eridan are who knows how many light years or whatever away, and Vriska is off wherever the fuck she is after being part of kidnapping poor Matuna. Your options for your people in your friend group to have a normal conversation with are Terezi, which can't happen yet because you've got to work out what to do with her in June, so that's out. Equius, who either knows about this because of Nepeta or doesn't, and then you'd be part of that conflict between him and Nepeta when this blows up, and you'd rather avoid that, thanks. Plus, he might still be mad about your fight with Nepeta. That leaves Tavros. He's not your first choice of people to talk to, but he's uninvolved, and you are still friends. It'd be good to catch up and mentally have a break for a little bit. It'd be good for you. You know what? Yeah, let's do this.
We're making it happen?
I hope that somewhere in the far distance on that stupid planet, Dave Strider just got a cold chill down his posture pole from all the disdain I have for him introducing that stupid meme into our friend group.
It's very catchy.
So's the plague.
Okay, so where do you want to meet up? Is now good?
What about that Meowbee's Cafe up on 3rd?
Oh my god, yes, I have a loyalty card there!
I'm not surprised. It's not too far from mine, so I'll head out now and get a table for us.
Yes! I'm so on board with this. We are making shit transpire.
Ugh. You lock your tablet screen and head to the door. You pause for a moment and look around to see if anything is on the floor that shouldn't be, and when you see that you're clear of errant hair ties, stray singular headphones, or anything like that, you hit the button to have the little cleaning droid do a sweep of your main living area while you're out. There's a huge pressing conspiracy, things you need to do, panic you need to process. But right now, you're going to have
A mental palate cleanser. You're going to see a friend that you've not seen properly in a while and catch up. A nice interlude in the shit show. Despite describing the place as frilly, you do quite like it. Earth had establishments like this, and when humans took to space, they often brought their pets with them, even on ships where they weren't supposed to. Humans smuggled animals aboard. Quite simply put, though, in a merciless and practical sense, there just isn't the room for everyone who wants an animal to have one, not to mention the resources that they take. On top of that, animals can and have escaped into the small vents that the cleaning droids use, or into the laundry, down through the plumbing. No one wants to have to rescue a danger noodle from the electrical wiring of a ship, or to rescue errant flat beasts from the air conditioning. It's a bad time all around. However, there is a need for animals. Many humans do better with pets, and for those with certain psychological needs, it greatly helps them to have a pet. Then there's people like Dave, who hugely benefited from having an assistance animal. For everyone else, there are animal cafes, play parks, pet loans, and the like. Their numbers are carefully controlled, and the animals are well looked after, and people can come and spend time with animals of their choosing to de-stress and relax. Someone can rent out a bark beast for an afternoon at one of the little specialized parks and play to their heart's content, or, in your case, you can go to a Meowbeast cafe. You're there first, and you book a table out for you both, leaving your name so that when Tavros arrives, he can find you. It's mostly humans inside, or at least at tables where there are trolls too, there's always at least one human. They've got a bigger affinity for small animals, which makes sense, as they didn't evolve on a planet where all the other smallish animals could and would try to kill you. That said, you have heard of Earth Australia, so there's exceptions to all generalizations, you suppose. You take a seat at your table and figure since you're at a tea place, you may as well have tea and cake, just for the sake of the trip. There's a chai that's calling your name, but the cakes are harder to choose between. You decide you'll have carrot cake, since that's got spices in it that'll probably go well with your chai. With the decisions made, you pick up a nearby toy, in this case a long stick with a glittery ball with corded tassels on the end of it. There's Meowbeasts all around the place, walking across little walkways and bridges, clear tunnels that connect high-up plush perches. Right above your head, there's a very fluffy black Meowbeast sleeping in a clear tunnel, which from your perspective is just a fluffy shape with little pink squished beans. A little to your left, you spy a Meowbeast with long legs rubbing itself on the central pole of an otherwise empty table. It has short tan fur with black stripes up its legs and tail, and large black outline spots on its body. You make eye contact with it, and it stares back at you with intelligent greenish eyes. You lean forward a little, touching the tip of your newly acquired toy to the ground, and then very quickly whipping it to one side and then the other. Instantly, the Meowbeast's eyes sharpen, and it dips low to the ground as it watches you jerk the toy about. Its backside wiggles, and you watch as the dark centers of its eyes grow, and then, all at once, it sprints, leaps, and pounces on your toy mid-movement. Sharp little teeth sink into the toy, and you continue weakly wiggling it as if to simulate the death throes of whatever poor creature this fearsome predator thinks it has caught. The Meowbeast flops onto its side and starts kicking at it with its back legs too, as if to disembowel your toy. "I think if you were bigger, you'd do that to me," you say gently. "Oh, she would," Tavros' voice says, and you look around to see him leaning over to look at the fearsome hunter on the ground. The aforementioned fearsome apex predator is somehow startled by Tavros quietly walking over, leaps up in the air, kicks off of your chair, and scrambles away, only to kick over a water bowl on the way out. Tavros giggles at that fantastic display and sits down on the other chair. The waitress who brought him over looks like she wants to take your order. Tavros flounders, realizing the same thing. "I'll go first. Give you a second to choose. Could I get a chai and a carrot cake, please?" you ask. "Regular or large chai?" the waitress asks. "Large," you say emphatically. "Anything with caffeine in it, please and thank you." The waitress nods at you and taps your order through on her screen, then looks at Tavros. "The jasmine, perhaps? And the red velvet cake is really good today if you want to try it," she suggests, seemingly familiar with Tavros, which makes sense if he's here a lot. "Yes, please, that'd be great. Thank you," Tavros says gratefully and awkwardly rubs at the back of his neck. The waitress nods, puts your order through, smiles at you both, and leaves.
I should come here more. I think I've only been here once or twice. There's this whole ship, and you get caught up in going to the same few places.
You say wistfully as you watch a pair of kittens clumsily play across the other side of the room, surrounded by a group of young girls who look like they could literally die from seeing something so cute. At least that's the impression you get.
It is pretty great.
Tavros agrees happily, his hands politely in his lap as he looks around the room at all the little meow beasts.
Sorry if I was, an asshole on Trollian or anything. I appreciate that you were inviting me to hang out as a nice thing and not,
You apologize quietly.
I, might think you'd been secretly replaced by a robot if you had been super polite and nice,
Tavros says with a grin.
Oh, look, suddenly not sorry anymore,
you say with cheery malice, and Tavros giggles. You guess that's the weird thing with really old friends. Sometimes you forget they aged too. It's really easy to think of Tavros as the chronically anxious, unsure of himself, timid little kid that he was way back when. He's still, obviously, somewhat anxious about how he interacts with people, but he's grown up a lot too. He actually did the whole vet thing. How many little kids grow up to do the thing they said was their dream job when they were 6? Not many.
So, how's work for you then?
You ask.
Pretty good. We've been really expanding the whole livestock management. Lots and lots of chickens at the moment. Lab-grown meat's way easier to produce, but there's some stuff you just can't synthesize and all. But it does mean that I can keep the animals we do keep happy, and since we're expanding, I've been working on maintaining that. But, it's work,
Tavros tells you.
The amount of calculations you must have to do with that is crazy. Rather you than me.
You sigh.
Most of that's done by other people, thankfully. I just do the animal stuff. I like seeing pets more, though, like these guys.
Tavros smiles, looking up and noticing the fluffy black shape in the tube above you.
These guys are one thing. I personally wouldn't want to be you if you have to deal with Beck. That bark beast was way too intelligent, if you ask me,
you say.
Beck is by far the most intelligent animal I've ever communed with. Alarmingly smart, actually. Not just of Earth animals and Alternian ones, but totally alien ones, too. If I didn't know Beck was just a bark beast, I'd wonder.
Tavros agrees with a somewhat haunted look on his face. You take a moment to ponder the unnerving intelligence of Dave's former guide dog, now mostly retired and freelancing at being a menace to fill the time.
But, how are you?
Tavros asks, a little less sure of himself now you're not talking about animals.
Stressed, mostly. Gamzee's working all the time doing fuck knows what, and I've been spending time with the Striders since we were all together when the whole shuttle thing went sideways.
You sigh. That's the least of your problems right now, but it's not like that on its own is insignificant. You just have no intention of telling Tavros the rest right now. Now, you guess he'll find it all out when the Striders release this all, somehow.
I heard that it was some kind of, glitch, like in the viewing system or something?
Tavros says, his eyes darting away from you to look at a meow beast.
It was not. We all saw it. Ask Gamzee if you don't believe me, or Rose, or June. You tell him firmly.
That's so weird,
Tavros says, and then perks up as the waitress comes back over with your cakes on dainty little plates. I'll be back in just a second with your drinks, she tells you both quickly and hurries off again, deftly stepping over 2 meow beasts who try to take her out by the ankles as she goes.
Oh, she was right. This does look nice,
Tavros says quietly as he leans over his plate of cake and takes in its perfectly frosted form.
Anyway, it's been a lot, is all. I just wish I could do something,
you say, vaguely.
I know what you mean. The planet didn't have enough dangerous animal life for it to be worth me going, and it wasn't like the team was the first there, so there was no question about me going. All I could do was look at the files the first team sent us and advise about the wildlife they'd seen. I feel bad being, safe up here and they're down there. Not that I'd be any help, unless the problem was animals.
Tavros agrees quietly.
I forget sometimes that you go down there with them. They have you like Solux, right? Where you're not actually sailor qualified, but you've got skills they want.
you say thoughtfully.
I could try and qualify if I wanted, but it's not really worth it. I'm not supposed to go on anything with big gravity changes because of my back implant,
he explains. Right. You forget about that sometimes, too. Dave's not the only guy you know with cybernetic implants. There was this stupid thing that happens when you were kids, really little, like 6 or 7. He and Vriska were fighting, and Vriska psionically lashed out to make him fall off the play equipment, something that you'd all done at one point. Well, maybe you'd tumbled off it more than most, and Solok's less than most since he can fly, but still, it was playground stuff, and kids bounce. Usually, anyway. He just landed bad, smashed something in his back that stopped him walking. There was a lot that could be done then, and within a few years, Tavros was able to walk again thanks to modern medical interventions, but he had to have that cybernetic bit in his back replaced every few years. As you understand it now Equius looks after him just as he does Dave. You know that Vriska never meant that to happen, and of course she didn't handle it well. She was just a kid. Sometimes, when you can't sleep, you wonder if you could have or should have said something when you were growing up as she was dealing with her responsibility and guilt, being able to forgive herself and hold herself accountable. If you'd said the right thing, could you have stopped what happened to Mituna? This isn't the time to think about it, and you doubt that Tavros wants to hear that. Couldn't Equius make you something that'd adjust like he does with Dave's eyes? You wonder.
Maybe, but Dave's eyes are a lot easier to get to. He can have those modified without having actual surgery. I'm cleared for a range, I suppose, and honestly, I prefer my job than sailor stuff. It's interesting sometimes, but...
Tavros shrugs a little helplessly. No, I hear you. You wouldn't catch me dead on some alien planet. Gamzee says it's fun and exciting, but that's what TV and video games are for. You snort.
They're certainly easier.
Tavros laughs. You both pause as the waitress brings you both your drinks. Your chai and your jasmine. Everything good? She asks, and you both burble back some nonsense mashup like, oh, yeah, no, great, it's thanks, good, yes, until she smiles and leaves. Caffeine, you hiss in delight and pick up your tall mug of chai, bringing it to your face and inhaling the godly scent of it.
I am very excited,
Tavros declares and reaches out for his own tea to smell it. His larger hands wrap delicately around his teacup and your blood pressure freezes. Around the back of one hand is a glowing shape with delicate wings that spread over the back of his hand as little glowing sparkles dot his skin down to his fingers. Tavros knows.
Karkat, are you okay?
Tavros asks, and you snap back to alertness, shoving your fear down and masking it. Sorry, you know when you're doing something and you remember something else? I just remembered that I left my charging cable on the floor, or I think I did, and then sent the cleaning drone out. You lie hastily.
Oh, that always happens. You swear you check everywhere and turn it on, and you're in line at the store and you suddenly doubt. I always do that.
Tavros agrees. He knows. He knows. Oh, fuck, you can't let him know that you know. Keep talking. No, wait. Try to find out what you can. Carefully. Well, I'll deal with that when I get back. Say, Tavros, about your missions. Tell me everything, you say. Subtle. Aradia once said that you were as subtle as a brick to the face, and you'd resent that if it wasn't true sometimes. Actually, you resent it anyway.
Everything would take a while, I think.
Tavros points out and delicately sips his tea and then puts it down because it's still too hot. I'll admit that, you concede.
If you're worried about Solix, I'd say you probably are overthinking it. I mean, he's not a sailor, same as me, but his job would mostly be staying with all the tech, which is, a lot more indoorsy than my stuff is, and I've always been safe.
Tavros tells you, delicately slicing into his cake with a small fork. Sailors die more than any other job, and Solix has less training than literally anyone there, you counter.
That's, space travel at all is dangerous. Even this. Being on the planet is never as bad as the getting there or back,
he points out, not making eye contact with you now.
Yeah, especially when that shuttle can just literally vanish sometimes,
you say sharply. Tavros shoves a whole chunk of cake in his mouth and makes a gesture like, "Oh, sorry, can't answer that just yet. Can't talk with my mouth full. This certainly isn't to buy me time to think. Nope." You wait for him to finish chewing.
I couldn't really say,
Tavros says finally. No, you bet he can't. It's probably not even his fault. He probably just... How did Dr. Lalonde put it? Awake? He saw something and got marked for it. Tavros doesn't have the guts to be part of a huge conspiracy, and you don't mean that meanly. You're pretty sure you could make him crack and tell you everything, but that'd be a shitty thing to do, and you more or less know the important stuff already. Besides which, if you did get him to tell you all, he would then just go and tell someone else that he told you. Are you gonna hold Tavros responsible for this in the same way that the Striders were wondering about their partners? Like how you're wondering about Nepeta? You can't believe that any of them would knowingly be a part of something so terrible. But how involved do you have to be before you're part of the problem?
Is there something on your mind, Karkat? I mean, in particular?
Tavros asks. It's complicated, you mutter and pick up your drink. Tavros nods slowly, and for a few seconds it's silent between you two.
I think everything is complicated. Maybe it always has been, but when we were kids, things seemed easier. We're friends because when we were kids, we just decided we were, but you try to make friends as an adult or even find someone to date, and it's so much harder. Or even other people's things. Talking about Solix, I mean, when he broke up with Aradia, it was weird. If they'd broken up when we were 13, it would have been one of them was in the wrong for it, and they'd be bad, and that'd be it. Now it's...
Tavros says. It's way more complicated. You agree.
Right? I didn't know what to say to her. I couldn't call Solix names. He's not bad. He didn't do anything wrong, and she didn't either.
Tavros nods. Still having feelings for someone, but knowing it's not right to be with them is way more complicated than I was prepared for. On top of that shit, there's the rest of your life. Are you doing the right thing? Could you be doing more? What are your obligations to people? Things were way simpler in preschool, you're right. You say bitterly, and drink your chai to take the taste of adult disappointment out of your mouth.
Pretty sure we can't go back. We're kind of tall for that,
Tavros says with a quiet little laugh. Fuck that, I want to go back to juice boxes and midday naps. You grumble and down the last of your chai.
Technically, if you are having a proper lunch break and not working, you could still do that,
Tavros points out. If Gamzee asks, I definitely take proper lunch breaks, you say, and then regret it the moment Gamzee's name passes your lips. Now there's a topic that's not simple at all. You don't think you can blame Gamzee for not telling you about any of this, and you're not sure where you stand on him not letting you in on even part of this. Even if it had just been how he was feeling, he could have told you more. You could have helped a little, but was not telling you really a free choice for him? Who knows? You're not happy where you are, you know that. Quite honestly, you wonder if he is. Are you really helping here? Clearly not about anything deep and emotional for him. He won't let you at that stuff. And does he help you? Maybe. When you were younger and your anger got the better of you, sometimes you did just need to calm your rumble spheres and think clearly. Gamzee was good at that. You could rant at him and he'd never engage with it. You could vent and then think. That's not really what you need now. You're not so irrational as you were when you were 13. You're still emotional, but you want help with your problems. Gamzee's not great at that. You know he pities you, that he cares about you, and the same goes for how you feel about him. But if all you do is deal with his surface problems, calm him from nightmares, rare fits of high-blood anger, and also provide a way of smoothing the feathers he ruffles on other people, then is that it? If he doesn't give you the help you need, but just keeps you calm, then he's soothing without helping, and you're a crutch to a bone he won't let you set. Neither of you are bad for the other. You're just not good either. It's fucking complicated, is what it is.
You finish up your friend meetup with Tavros and promise to do it more often, but your mind is still on Gamzee when you get back to your hive. You're lucky that you're looking at your palm husk when you walk in and catch the sight of GHB out of the corner of your eye, just so you're prepared to deliberately not see him when you look up. Instead, you look at Gamzee, who's sitting on the lounge plank. He's got a box of pizza next to him, but he's chewing it with about as much enthusiasm as you'd expect him to have if you'd handed him a slice of the box itself instead. "Gamzee," you say in surprise. Gamzee looks around at you, his expression almost hollow and vacant. He looks pale, not just because of the remnants of face paint, but the rest of his skin is looking washed out too. "Are you okay? Obviously you're not okay. You don't look okay," you say uneasily as you get closer. Gamzee's gaze flicks to the side for a split second. If you didn't know what he was looking at, you'd have missed that. "How many times have you missed that?" "Tired," Gamzee says finally. There's a hissing, indecipherable voice behind you, and Gamzee remains tense. Something inside of you hardens like steel, cooling into something sharper, more usable. "You haven't got a drink," you say, over what is definitely GHB's voice. "I'm gonna get you a drink. You look dehydrated as shit, and your blood sugar's probably fucked too." You turn around and find yourself face to chest with Murder Clown. You remember what Signless said about not liking people walking through him, how it made him feel dead and not there. So, you deliberately walk right through GHB like he's nothing, because that's what he is. You make your way over to the cabinets on the wall and start looking for a drink for Gamzee, picking something with a good deal of sugar. You felt weak after your brief and likely not that effective attempt to balance when in the shower. Gamzee probably feels way worse. A hand whooshes past your face in a blatant attempt to make you flinch, and instead you walk right through him again. After several paces, spite wells up in you, and you pause. "I forgot to get something for me," you announce, turn back, and walk through GHB again. "Actually, do you want this one or this one?" you ask, holding the drinks aloft and deliberately putting one through GHB's face in the process. "Whatever you don't want," Gamzee says slowly. Maybe can the spiteful theatrics for now. You kick the cabinet shut, clip GHB with your arm as you pass, and return to Gamzee. "Here," you say, handing Gamzee a drink and perching on the arm of the lounge plank so he doesn't have to move his pizza box. "Sorry I've been out so much. It's been..." Gamzee apologizes, and you ache a little to hear it. You don't want to be his Myril anymore, but it doesn't mean you can just turn off loving the guy. "You don't need to apologize. I know that if this was in your control, you'd be here more. I've probably not helped lately. It's just been a lot, is all." You cut in. Gamzee nods, probably in the vague agreement that this has all been a lot. You want to ask how he's doing with Father's death. You want to tell him that it should be better when the other sailors get back, but you can't, because you shouldn't know why that'd be better. "I saw Tavros today," you say, switching topics. "Yeah?" Gamzee asks. "Yeah, it was nice. We went to the Meowbeast Cafe. I don't know if you've ever been," you say. Gamzee shakes his head, his mouth too full of pizza to answer you, or at least he's too busy putting more pizza in there. If his mouth was just full, he'd probably answer you anyway. "You should go. I'm sure you'd like it. You're big and chill, so they'd probably be all over you. I think wanting them to pay attention to you drives them away," you say thoughtfully. You can just picture Gamzee covered in contented Meowbeasts. "Cats like me," Gamzee says with a chuckle, and it takes you a second to catch that he's saying your name, not the human word for the animal. "Wow, that was terrible. Nepeta's not been gone that long, and you're already filling in with feline jokes, really?" you say, shaking your head. Across the room, GHB says something garbled but dismissive sounding. Out of the edge of your eye, you see him wander off through a wall. Ever so slightly, Gamzee relaxes. "Are you working tomorrow?" you ask. "Yeah, early." Gamzee sighs, like he thinks you're going to be mad about it. "Can I make you a very exciting proposition? We sit here, you eat pizza, we watch something mindless until it's time to go to bed.
I'm really tired, and you're obviously burnt the fuck out, you suggest.
Gamzee nods gratefully, and that's what the two of you do. There's no jam, no discussion of feelings. It's not Moirail shit. He can't tell you things. You can't let him know that you know things. There's a variety of justifications for both of those. Like you said, it's complicated. The next morning, Gamzee gets up early, just waking you as he climbs out of bed. Still half asleep, you stroke his bare back in what you hope is a soothing way. Since you can't do anything more to help him than you already are, you at least want to help him be calm. Sleep claims you once more, and when you awake again properly, it's from a message in your movie group to meet tomorrow night. All throughout the day, your digestion sac is trying to tie itself in knots. In an effort to be productive, you alternate between doing your work and sending Signless off on errands, hunting down people on Cancre's list to see if they're in on it or not. More often than not, Cancre was right, and you note it down as Signless goes through the list. Occasionally he's wrong, but maybe only every 1 in 10 at most, and they're usually the ones Cancre wasn't too sure about. By the end of the next day's work, Signless has got through everyone Cancre picked out, and you feel good that you can at least bring that along to your meeting to show that you've been helpful. Sorry, you mean your movie group. You arrive at the Strider Hive and confirm that it's pleasantly ghost clown free. No matter how much GHB seems to enjoy fucking with you when you're at home, he doesn't seem all that interested in following you outside of it, which suggests that he's only trying to bother you because it upsets Gamzee. We're safe, you announce as the door closes. You're the last one here.
Good,
Rose nods.
I've been working on the list Cancre gave me. He was pretty accurate. Signless has been doing a great job checking people for me, since I can tell them where they are because I can see if they're at work and where.
You tell them.
You do put the resource in human resources, don't you?
Kanaya smiles.
On the plus side, this isn't technically a breach of confidentiality since I'm not the one following people and laws don't cover dead people.
You point out.
Technically, in the legal right, is not quite as reassuring as being covered by the spirit of the law. That wasn't a ghost joke.
Signless adds that last part hastily.
Fuck, thanks, Signless.
You groan. The others give you curious looks, but you just tell them that you're saving them from a dumb joke and take a seat.
Karkat got a little ahead of my agenda, which was going to be catching up on where we all are with our respective tasks, so I am glad to hear it went well,
Dirk says.
If by well you mean we've confirmed that the conspiracy covers a lot of people, including fucking Tavros, by the way,
you exclaim.
That is a surprise. He's hardly clandestine,
Kanaya says, her eyebrows raising.
And Terezi?
Rose asks. You stare at her dumbly.
Right, that was the other thing I was going to do. Shit.
You hiss.
Just show me where this person lives and what they look like.
Signless sighs.
Sorry, Signless is gonna go check. I completely forgot. Fuck.
You trip over your apologies as you pull up Terezi's address in your contacts and then a picture of her from your camera roll.
I'll go see.
Signless nods and vanishes through a wall.
In the meantime, Rose, do you want to go over the data we're distributing?
Dirk asks.
We ended up making a short 5-minute movie about this, showing all of the relevant data, some footage from Mom, from her experiments, and links to find out more. We had to use a text-to-speech bot rather than put our voices in it, of course, and I left any footage of Dave out of the video that everyone's going to see. For each section of evidence we have, Kanaya and I have put together a little layman's terms explanation of it and what it means, but we're including the raw information as well. The idea is that everyone sees the video, a lot of people will look at the summaries, and the scientifically minded will read the actual data that's there.
Rose explains.
The question is, do we also include the list of people that we know are aware of this?
Kanaya asks.
If they knew and did nothing, they're responsible too,
Rose says tersely.
It's more complicated than that,
you counter.
It isn't,
Rose retorts.
No, it is. We don't know how these people get marked or what they agreed to. Like, Tavros, he's not conspiring anything. All he does is sometimes go to a planet and mess with their animals. He probably saw something he shouldn't have, got told a doctored explanation, got all glowy, and sent back to his normal life. And Tavros isn't us. We're only able to do something because you're able to interpret all the data we have. Because we happen to have that dumb Ouija experience, and because these three can do computer magic. What could Tavros alone do? You argue.
That's not what we do.
Hal sighs. No, shut up. That's exactly what we do. I'm calling it that. Roxy insists.
Middle ground, we could say that we have a list of people we know are in on it and how we know they are without releasing their information just yet. If they start causing problems, we expose them, assuming that everyone won't be able to see the evidence in front of their eyes by that point, because I've seen people glowing lately.
Dirk says. Fine. Rose sighs, clearly not happy, but agreeing to compromise.
Good. Here's our part. We're doing a virus within a virus thing. Think of it like a pill that you take where once it's in your stomach it releases the medicine. This is like that. We're gonna take Rose's video and files and put it in Karkat's machine-mangling virus, but we're gonna put that inside a sleek and efficient one that the three of us designed. Basically, it's going to work its way through the ship's systems. We're gonna release it at several points from places each of us can access. It'll spread, and then at a set time it'll crack open, releasing Karkat's thing. That'll fuck everything up until the only thing that'll be accessible is Rose's assorted files. I've modified Karkat's virus so it won't actually fuck with major ship systems or destroy everyone else's programs or anything like your original one would have. I'd like to keep the life support on, thanks.
Hal explains. First of all, fuck you, my virus wasn't that bad, you say.
It was. I had to get into Solix's computer to find out what he did to it so he could stop it the first time.
Hal says flatly. Wait, how did you even get into his machine at all? You ask in surprise.
A lot of patience and stubbornness. I may have also messed with his files for my own amusement and deleted his browser history. Admittedly, he only said I should do that if he died, but just knowing that I did it is going to piss him off royally, and I'm excited to see that. You know, once this whole disaster is over.
Hal adds that last bit hastily. Dirk is squinting at Hal like he's trying to decide whether or not he should say something. Roxy decides for him. Are you sure you're not pitch for him? She asks.
No, I'm just an asshole. Besides, Solix definitely doesn't have pitch feelings for me.
Hal says emphatically. Because, you know, it's someone else in this family that Solix has his spade and or heart set on. To anyone else, this just sounds like Hal being very clear that Solix isn't interested in him.
Oh, no, I'm sure. No one bought the idea that he did, remember?
Dirk points out. Yeah, good. Dirk didn't catch that.
So, we should watch Rose's video and then put it all together,
Dirk says. Signless walks back through the wall, and you hold your hand up to halt Dirk for a second, and without missing a beat, Dirk falls into a debate about movie choices, which everyone else immediately plays into. No, it's Signless, you say to them, and everyone relaxes. I found her. She's not got a tattoo on her, no glow at all. She was licking things in her hive for no discernible reason, though, so I'm not sure what to tell you about that. He tells you. Oh, no, she just does that. She's blind. Therese is not in on it. You say that last part to everyone else in the room, and catch the relief on the faces of Rose and Kanaya.
What does her being blind have to do with licking things? Signless asks, sounding completely baffled.
I'll tell you later, you assure him.
Okay, Rose's video then,
Dirk says, and hits play on the screen. The video that's going to play to everyone at the end of the week begins. Something that you hope will help your Moirel and your friends, that'll fix things instead of putting people in danger. You hope. Attention, citizens of the Atuan. It begins. You have been lied to.